This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Gidou-Ewart. It's Tuesday, January 12th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of coronavirus, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in South Africa with details on the country's new COVID-19 variant strain. How dangerous is it, and will vaccines work against it? Roseanne Philpott reports.
South Africa's COVID-19 variant is highly contagious, spreading rapidly and raising growing alarm globally.
This new variant is highly concerning because it is yet more transmissible and it appears to have mutated further than the new variant that's been discovered in the UK.
The one from the Republic of South Africa is a little bit more complicated.
This is a very dangerous time in the course of the pandemic.
I'm not happy with the speed you...
Where did it come from? How dangerous is it? And will vaccines work against it? The mutation, referred to as 501.V2, was discovered by a network of scientists around South Africa. First in Nelson Mandela Bay on the east coast, then spreading rapidly to the south and southeast of the country. Up to 90% of new cases are carrying the mutant variant, according to health authorities, driving a surge in infections that threatens to overwhelm South Africa's healthcare system.
Our wards are full. It's a very painful situation because a person in casualty, for you to get a bed, someone must die.
While hundreds of COVID-19 variations have been identified worldwide, this one appears to spread faster. It's similar to the UK variant in that it shares a common mutation of the spike protein, which the virus uses to infect cells. However, they are different variants. The World Health Organization says they originated separately, and this one in South Africa appears to have a number of additional mutations.
The one from the Republic of South Africa is a little bit more complicated because it overlaps a bit with the mutation in the UK, but it is a little bit more complicated because some of those mutations might have a negative impact on the efficacy of some of the monoclonal antibodies that are used. So we're looking into that very carefully.
Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine appears to work against both variants, according to early lab tests. But the findings are limited, and authorities say it's too early to tell at this stage if the inoculations will be effective. Scientists are sure that the vaccines can be modified if needed in as little as 6 weeks.
That was Roseanne Philpott of Reuters reporting. In the western U.S. state of California, funeral homes are turning away bereaved families because, like hospitals, they are overwhelmed by deaths due to the coronavirus. Angelina Bagdosarian has this report narrated by Anna Rice.
The number of available ICU beds is dramatically shrinking in Los Angeles, California's coronavirus epicenter. Like hospitals, funeral homes in the city are also overwhelmed due to COVID deaths, and bereaved families must wait weeks to hold funerals for their loved ones.
I'm letting all the families know that it's going to take time. It's not going to be a rush situation. Their loved one may be here for 3 or 4 weeks.
Over 28,000 people have died in California from COVID-19, more than 11,000 in Los Angeles County alone. Samuel Eaton works for a mortuary transport company.
4 days ago, I had 10 calls, and we were running ragged, and we didn't have hardly no place. We was shuffling to find other mortuaries where we could keep the body there.
Our phones have been ringing off the hook. Right now, we're on a first-come, first-served basis. The way that we're handling it is right now I have my contractors building more space so that we can house more people.
Boyd's colleague Rob Kalin says he's been forced to turn away bereaved families.
It's an unprecedented situation. There are capacity issues here in Los Angeles where I've had to tell families, 8 families in the last 4 days, that I could not help them. The facility that we use for the refrigeration and embalming and all of that, and they have space for 85 people. I was at a place yesterday that had space for 375 people, and they were out of space. They were waiting for a refrigerated truck to show up on Tuesday where they could start using a facility like that.
And there are still long lines at the COVID-19 testing facilities next to the Martin Luther King Hospital. Those who are most vulnerable are especially worried.
Because I'm a diabetic and I'm a senior citizen, so that's why. Just to put their mind at rest.
The situation is so dire, the California National Guard has been called and reportedly will be sending refrigerated trucks and providing medical help. For Angelina Bagdasaryan in Los Angeles, Anna Rice, VOA News.
Nancy Kalembe is a woman. Kalembe says Uganda needs a change of leadership after 34 years of President Yoweri Museveni, and she believes she's the right woman for the job. Halima Thumani reports from Mayuge.
Ugandan presidential candidate Nancy Kalembe is the only woman to take on 10 men in this year's election. Kalembe says the country's healthcare, education, infrastructure and jobs are sorely lacking. She blames President Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, and says he is behaving like the dictators he once helped topple.
He said his first act of kindness and love for this country was to go to the bush and fight for our freedom, the Ugandans. At the time I was 6 years old, in '86. My opinion would have been that the next best act of kindness is to hand over power peacefully.
But Museveni has a great deal of support in Uganda. Even in the Busoga region, where Kalembe is from, she is appealing to those who have not seen their lives improve under Museveni's rule. The 2016-2017 Ugandan National Household Survey shows 75% of Busoga's people are poor compared to a 63% national average.
We are widows taking care of children single-handedly. Our children go to school, but we are not able to do more to better their future. So I appeal to all women in Uganda. This is our moment. We have a female speaker. Let the president be a woman.
Uganda in 1994 became the first African country to have a female vice president, and Kalembe is the 4th woman to try for Uganda's highest office. But a 2016 Research World International poll showed 53% of respondents said Uganda was safer in the hands of a male president. Analysts say it will take time for Ugandans to accept the idea of a woman president.
We still need to do more for the population to appreciate the fact that regardless of whether it's a man or woman who gets elected, the important thing for the voter should be how they perform. Are they able to transform the lives of the people whom they have been elected to represent using the mandate they have?
While no woman candidate has ever come close to becoming Uganda's president, Kalembe hopes her campaign will at least keep alive the idea of a real change in leadership. Halima Othmani for VOA News, Mayuge, Uganda.
Facebook has shut down several accounts of a network in Uganda linked to the country's Ministry of Information. The social media giant accuses the network of using fake accounts to promote the ruling party and the president. The accounts closed were allegedly linked to the Citizens Interaction Center at the Ministry of Information and Communications Technology. In a statement, Facebook accused the account holders of using fake and duplicate accounts to manage pages, comment on other people's content, impersonate users, and reshare posts in groups to make them appear more popular than they were. Duncan Abigaba, the deputy head of the center, says the accounts were targeted because of their support for Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni and the ruling National Resistance Movement. Abigaba says the action by Facebook is unfair since members of the opposition National Unity Platform Party, led by singer-turned-politician Bobi Wine, are using social media to promote Wine's presidential candidacy. Joel Shenyoni, the NUP spokesperson, denies the party was involved in the account shutdowns. French President Emmanuel Macron says development banks and states are pledging billions of dollars over the next 4 years to build a great green wall to help contain desertification in Africa's northern Sahel region. Soraya Ali has the details.
French President Emmanuel Macron says that over $14 billion has been pledged to build what's being called a Great Green Wall in Africa to help contain desertification. Speaking at an international biodiversity summit in Paris on Monday that his government is hosting, Macron said the pledges from development banks and states will come over the next 4 years. President of the African Union, Moussa Faki Mahamat, said the project needed to be funded properly. The Great Green Wall is an African-led initiative that aims to plant trees and grasslands in the northern Sahel region. Creeping desertification of land on the edges of the Sahara Desert is plunging people into desperate poverty and driving some to migrate. The project covers a strip of land stretching 5,000 miles from the Atlantic to the Red Sea and hopes to create sustainable ecosystems. Speaking at the summit, Macron said that's 100 million hectares restored, 10 million jobs created, and 250 million tons of carbon captured.
Soraya Ali of Reuters filed that report. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, an insight into the role of the U.S. intelligence community during the presidential transition. We'll be right back.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Lina Khmoudou, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. The U.S. House of Representatives is preparing to vote to impeach President Donald Trump this week following the violent breach of the U.S. Capitol by the president's supporters that left 5 people dead. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports on Democrats' options for removing Trump just days before his term ends.
Just days after President Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol to stop the electoral vote count certifying President-elect Joe Biden's win. House Democrats, seen here evacuating the House chamber during the January 6th attack, are now acting to remove President Donald Trump.
To declare President Donald J. Trump incapable of executing the duties of his office.
Their first step? A resolution calling on Vice President Mike Pence and a majority of Trump's cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment in the next 24 hours, declaring the president unfit for office.
If the Vice President and the cabinet do not act, the Congress may be prepared to move forward with impeachment.
Despite rioters' calls for his hanging for refusing to overturn the election results, Pence is not expected to take that step. A vote on impeachment instead could come as early as midweek.
We need angry patriots to fill the House.
Charging Trump with incitement of insurrection for his statements on his now suspended Twitter account and for remarks to supporters immediately before the January 6th Capitol riot.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
With a little over a week before Biden's inauguration, Democrats say they can act fast.
This was all out in the open. This was open incitement of people to stop Congress from accepting the certified electoral college results.
That would make Trump the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice.
A sitting president inciting an insurrection against the United States government is perhaps the worst thing that a president could ever possibly do. And that statement needs to be made. Second, and more pragmatically, if he were impeached and convicted, that would prevent him from running for office in the future.
There is some Republican support for congressional action, holding Trump accountable for his actions.
I think the best thing for the country to heal would be for him to resign. The next best thing is the 25th Amendment.
But Democrats already have the votes for impeachment. They will likely wait to send the article over to the U.S. Senate until later this year. An impeachment trial would stop all other Senate business, hampering Biden's first 100 days in office with a new Democratic majority in both chambers. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
As President-elect Joe Biden inches closer to taking oath of office, we'll take an in-depth look at the role of the U.S. intelligence community during the presidential transition. I spoke to VOA National Security Correspondent Jeff Seldin on how U.S. security officials communicated with the public during the administration of President Donald Trump and how that might change under a Biden presidency.
Well, it's interesting because under the Obama administration, the intelligence community made an effort to be more transparent, more public, and talk more about some of the big issues, including terrorism, cyber activity, to the public. And that really came to the forefront during the election when the intelligence community hesitantly, but decided it had no choice, started talking in October of that year, October of 2016, about Russian meddling in the presidential election. And of course, after Trump won, the intelligence community came out with its findings, concluding that Russia had in fact meddled in the election. That didn't sit well with candidate Trump or then President Trump. And so there were always these tensions. One of his first acts after he took the oath of office, he visited CIA headquarters, the headquarters of the U.S. spy agency, and he gave what some perceived as a very partisan political speech in front of their memorial wall, honoring their heroes, members of the CIA who fell in the line of duty, whose names the public will never know. Many in the intelligence community thought that was disrespectful. Others were encouraged. They liked what President Trump was doing. But the overall effect, and especially as the Russian investigation ramped up and more questions came out and this special counsel was appointed, the tensions just continued to boil. And it had what many former members of the intelligence community and former officials said was a chilling effect on how they communicated with the public, to the point where this past year, the intelligence community did not give its usual annual worldwide threats hearing to Congress. And even just a few years back in 2019, during the hearing, what the intelligence community leaders, the director of national intelligence, the CIA director, it bothered President Trump, and he took to Twitter lambasting them for their views on Iran, on North Korea, in one tweet saying that they needed to go back to school. There will still be some tension. There always is, because the intelligence community's mantra in the U.S. is to, as they put it, tell truth to power. But Biden, an experienced member of the Senate before he became vice president and then 8 years as vice president, the relationships are a little bit better. So people are a little bit more hopeful that there will be a little bit more openness, a little bit more transparency under the Biden administration.
Now, Jeff, given those, kinds of interferences from outside of the United States, how does the intelligence community then provide uninterrupted service to both the outgoing and incoming president, even at the very moment the power of the presidency changes hands?
Traditionally, the president receives his daily intelligence briefing called the President's Daily Brief, PDB. And so during an election, at a certain point, and it happened here, the candidate, when you have, the leading candidates, both the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate, so the president, his opponent will, or her opponent, as the case may be, will get briefings from the intelligence community. Once a winner is determined, then those briefings become more regular. And so for the past several weeks, for the past month or so, President-elect Joe Biden has been getting regular intelligence briefings along with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris from the intelligence community. Usually that happens fairly quickly after the election. This time around, because of the delay in certifying the results by government officials who are supposed to say, okay, let's go move to the transition, it didn't happen right away.
Can you elaborate further on how the intelligence community provides security information regarding foreign activities such as threats at the time of transition of power?
Well, with the United States, what we've seen over the past two elections now is a very prominent role for the intelligence community, which is something that is different. And it's really because of the way that social media works, that the internet works, where all these little things can have a huge impact on the domestic goings-on of a country, specifically with elections. This time around, in the advance of the election, you had the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, come out with the Director of the FBI and talk about Russian and Iranian attempts to influence voters, to scare voters ahead of the election, with a plot where Iran, in particular, was sending emails threatening people or, alleging that they were a member of a white extremist group in the U.S., the Proud Boys, and sending threatening emails to Democratic voters in an attempt to perhaps intimidate them or make President Trump look bad. During the campaign, there were intelligence officials who were constantly briefing both President Trump and President-elect then candidate Joe Biden on what was going on.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Voice of America headquarters Monday, where he spoke about the importance of U.S. broadcasting and the story of American exceptionalism in the world. VOA's diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports from Washington.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo paid his first visit to the Voice of America headquarters on Monday, looking back at some of the top themes he has sounded on his trips abroad as the top U.S. diplomat.
I tell audiences about American exceptionalism wherever and whenever I can, because it's true and because it's important. America is good and great, and everyone who truly grabs our founding understands this. We have always striven for a more perfect union, and goodness knows we don't always get it right. Therefore, we need both pride and humility about our past and our present.
Pompeo spoke days after supporters of President Donald Trump overran the U.S. Capitol. The images of chaos at a symbol of American democracy drew headlines around the world. Pompeo denounced the violence last week, but has not commented since. One expert told VOA he was shocked that Pompeo did not mention and was not asked about the siege, which occurred just outside the building where he spoke.
It was striking that Secretary Pompeo didn't mention the events of this past week, which are momentous and I think clearly on everybody's mind. And it's odd that he would skip over them, although you can perhaps fill in the blank as to why he may have done so.
The U.S. government funds VOA and other broadcasters to provide news and information to audiences around the world in dozens of foreign languages. Pompeo called Voice of America the voice of American exceptionalism. He said U.S. international broadcasting has a key role to play in promoting U.S. ideals around the world and is not the place to give authoritarian regimes a platform.
Governments like those in China, Iran, North Korea. They don't have the respect for the universal dignity of every human being in the way that America does. Indeed, that is what America was founded upon. Those regimes are anathema to everything that our nation stands for. We know that government exists to serve people. They believe that people exist to serve government. And VOA's work is vital. As I said before, you're the tip of freedom's spear.
Pompeo's tenure as the chief U.S. diplomat is expected to come to an end later this month. President-elect Joe Biden has chosen former Deputy Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to be the next Secretary of State if he is confirmed by the Senate. Cindy Sain, VOA News, Washington.
In Japan, an annual Shinto ritual of soil purification this year included prayers for an end to the COVID-19 pandemic. Social distancing guidelines forced a much smaller gathering than in previous years, but as VOA's Arash Arbasadi reports, believers still turned out and stripped down for the annual observance.
Sunday in Tokyo, a handful of people gathered to take off their clothes and jump in icy water to perform a 66-year-old Shinto ritual at the Tapuzu Inari Shrine. Believers come to purify their souls, but this year they're also asking for an end to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I prayed that the coronavirus comes to an end as soon as possible. I also prayed that we could have ordinary, normal daily lives.
65-year-old Shinji Ui heads the shrine's parishioner group and also takes the plunge with the COVID-constrained community. This year, the pandemic shrunk the group size from more than 100 in 2020 down to a dozen, which means the water stayed exceptionally cold. Participant Naoaki Yamaguchi explained.
Normally, we have more participants, and it makes the water temperature a little bit warmer. But this year, there were just 12 people, so the coldness was crazy.
Even under a clear sky with sunshine, the temperature here is about 5 degrees Celsius. That means lots of warming up for this group dressed in traditional loincloths for men and thin white gowns for women before they immerse themselves in a tub of water laden with ice blocks. Organizers hold the ceremony every year on the second Sunday of January. This year's theme included warding off epidemics, and there were no spectators allowed. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.